Welcome to Disengaged, the podcast. I'm Leah Harding, your host. I feel like there should be a noun for people who call off engagements, like hearted, brave engagement crushers, something like that. It's part 2 of the BFF series with my friend Hales. It's great to be here and to get to unpack this one a little bit more. Hope you enjoyed part 1. Part 2 is just as exciting, if not more. It is also a little shorter. Okay, let's jump into it. So Hales, you have quite a few friends who've not only gotten engaged, but then have made the brave choice to call off their engagement. So something clearly, you're the common denominator here. So you're the perfect person to ask if you think that there's a common thread that you see among all of these friends. Like, were we all religious or in a smaller community, or was there some type of a commonality like that?
So I had not considered that before, but yes, all the brave-hearted break-uppers, we'll come up with a more succinct name than that, but the working title, all religious, all had a faith base. So that is something, I had not actually realized. So yes, I think that is all true. And I think there is, and again, I'm very biased because these are all my very dear friends, but they all cared extremely deeply for the other person. There was a level of just like foundational care for the other person, which I think made it extremely challenging to make the choice to break up with the person. There was, again, very, shared friends and community. So those were all common factors for sure.
I do think that the pressure there is really interesting. What do you think for your friends, the breaker-uppers, what do you feel like was the commonality of like, this is what I have to do? Like, was there an ultimatum? Was the wedding just, a few days away? Was there some type of a commonality there? Because I was given an ultimatum, which I think a lot of people didn't realize. Because he was flying on a trip and was going to be gone for 4 days and said, when I come back, like, I need to know what your answer is because you're being really wishy-washy. And I was like, I didn't realize that was like the green light that I needed to actually do the thing. That one little break, that one little pause allowed me to actually pick up that bravery and do something with it instead of just like flop around. But I'm wondering if that was the case with any of your other friends.
I think, and again, not being them or having been in the relationship, again, just kind of being their friend as a support and a witness. To my understanding, I think that there was, a series of, doubts and the situation in the relationship getting more and more challenging as a result. And I do think that there was a moment or a day or a specific instance that was kind of the green light, the wake-up call, kind of whatever phrase you want to insert to that, that was kind of the illumination to communicate the choice. I think that it does kind of take, often, at least for those that I've known, take something happening. And maybe it's an ultimatum, maybe it's not. Maybe it's, again, something that was said or something that was done to just really, what's another analogy? The straw that broke the camel's back. So I think that there does often have to be so many camels, or back to the Bedouin. And so the Bedouin got, or so the camel got in the tent and then it broke the tent. Something like that.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'm vibing.
That's right.
Yeah, I do think that there is like some snap that has to happen. Like there's like this floundering period of like, what? I don't even know how to do this. And then there's like clear-eyed, full hearts, can't lose, whatever the Friday night thing is. I didn't even watch that show. I've just seen it on so many people's bios on like Instagram back in like 2009. But anyway, I digress. But like the like snap of like, okay, actually I can see clearly here and this is what I have to do. Like something happens. And I think it's so interesting how it's what that is for different people. Because I remember for the day that I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. It was actually my sister's birthday. And I was like, I don't want to ruin her birthday by doing this. But I was like, when's a good day to do this? Like, there's not like, it's not going to be like less painful tomorrow or yesterday. And it's like, okay, well, I guess this is what we're doing, because like this is when the ultimatum ends, because this is when he's back from his trip. And if I wait another day, then like this courage that I've had in his absence,
yes,
could wane, and like I literally had a schedule of like, I am going to his house at 10:30 a.m. By 11 a.m. I will be calling our leasing agent to try to get out of the rent of the house that we had put a payment on. It was like, okay, and then like at 11:15, like I'll clarify any questions, and then by 11:30 I need to be out of there. And then like my other friend who lived down the street was expecting me at like 11:45, and then I had a middle school concert to attend with her. Like I literally mapped the day out so perfectly, and I think that was really helpful to keep that bravery going. And something that I think is also super interesting about like the whole ultimatum thing, and I wonder about your friends as well, is that the way that I felt not with my partner was very eye-opening. Like the bravery that I had in his absence to end it was always stronger than when I would actually talk to him. Because once I started the dialogue with him, it was very much like, yeah, it's going to be okay. Don't worry. I'm here for you. And it's like, no, you're not hearing me. Like, I'm being serious. And it's like, no, I know. Like, let's do couples therapy. And it's like, again, like, like, no, I don't think you understand. Like, it's over.
Yep.
And like, I'm feeling like it should be over. And it's like, I know, like, we've had so many things we've gotten over, and I know we'll get over this one too. And it's like all of these things that I had like started to come to realize in my own time apart from him would just kind of get swept under the rug and would disappear with him. And I think that was part of this like cycle that I've also heard some people who've written me have said as well.
That's right. It's a pattern.
I think time apart. Yeah, it is a pattern.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I have heard and have seen, and in some ways, again, having never been engaged, but I've witnessed it and I've experienced it in dating relationships you both so badly want it to work, and there is a kind of I would argue, instead of interdependent, a codependent dynamic that evolves and grows and becomes solidified of who is the person with the I think it's the Gottman Institute. Recommend all BFFs to look up the Gottman Institute. They're amazing relationship resource and support and advice, but they talk a lot about kind of the codependent patterns that can arise in someone who's has an attachment style and is just, and those that are avoidant and how they often find each other. And even in healthy relationships, there can be those struggles, but in, relationships where it is not the right fit, it can just become this kind of, in some ways, like toxic dynamic of one person continuing to try to persuade the other to the relationship in a way. So I think that there is very much there's a snap that needs to take place, and there is a level of kind of like psychological courage that has to be garnered. And I think there is almost a time-bound aspect to it. I know for a friend of mine that did break off their engagement that I was very much, connected to before, during, and of course after. They knew that they needed to break off the engagement. It was a matter of just like when and how. And so there was, and again, the gathering of the courage, and something had to occur in order for them to fully realize, I am not willing to live with this. There's something that has to just kind of break and emerge within you in order to kind of do so often. Shouldn't say that for all people. But I know even in my own lived experience, when I think about, needing to have a challenging conversation with a friend or a family member or someone that I'm dating, or just anything that will cause either a very strong boundary or a severing of a relationship, there has to be almost like a rock bottom point or an awareness point that gets hit that is undeniable. Because I remember a piece of advice that you gave me, BFF, is also to not rush, not to rush the decision, and to kind of be able to really know, because you will have regrets, you will have grief regardless. But if you have the full awareness that you have made the right choice for yourself, then that's something that will always provide you some solace. And to quote one of my favorite movies, yeah, that's right, something to look back on. And, you know, one of my favorite quotes from my favorite movies, Chariots of Fire, think about the electronic music from the 70s and 80s, slow running, slow motion on the beach, all of that coming from that movie.
Dun, dun.
That's right. There's going to be a very slow beat. It's very inspiring. And Eric Little, who's kind of one of the heroes in the story, makes a choice that will, you know, cost him his career, and his coach and his friend is asking him, because it was a very challenging kind of moral conviction choice that he made. And his friend and coach asked him if that he has any regrets. And he responds with, regrets, yes, no doubts, though. And so I think that when I think about the amazing choice to end an engagement,
That's so
right?
good.
Literally, just I live in movie quotes. That's just the way to do it, generally. But I think about you and my other friends, and there will be regret, because you will not have love without regret. I think in many ways, even if you have the relationship, there are going to be hard things that occur and hurt that is caused. But if you have no doubt that you lived by your, your integrity and the choices that you made for yourself, that is exceptional. I genuinely do not believe at all in the living life with no regrets. I don't think that is human. But I think it's about having no doubt that you still acted in.
Let's insert our other queen, Brene Brown.
Yes!
She says that a lot. You know, she's like, why? Like, she's like, I have a lot of regrets. Like, to live with for no regrets. Like, what are you even doing?
That's right.
Like,
you're not living, probably.
Like, what's going on?
Yes, correct.
Like, are you okay?
Also might be a lack of self-awareness.
You don't have regrets?
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, I think that is so poignant, BFF. Like, you nailed that. Because I do have regrets. Like, I regret saying yes to getting engaged, but I rode through it to the best of my ability. And when I decided to call it off, I had no doubt at all. No second guessing occurred. Can
I ask you a question? Amazing.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, as you said that, you regret saying yes. And it's fine if you don't remember. I'm curious, do you have a memory of the feeling or a thought that transpired when you were asked? Did you also know it was coming?
Yes.
Did you feel like
trepidation
about it? Like, did you do your nails before because you knew it was coming? Like, what was that experience?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, okay, the expat life, you know, you travel a lot. So we were in France, and I was like, well, that seems like a decent place to get engaged. So yes, my nails were done. It just, the whole vibe was just kind of off. But like, I think this goes back to a lot of what I've written about and things that I'll continue to talk about. But like, I can be a performer, like especially relationally, like in my intimate relationships. And my goal is usually to make sure the other person feels okay.
Yeah.
Instead of checking in with self. And so I could feel his excitement building, and I was just nervous about the whole thing. Like, I just didn't really know what to feel. And I remember I was sitting in a coffee shop because I was like, you need to just go and ski. Like, I need caffeine and to be alone. And I texted 3 friends, and one wrote back, was like, yeah, do it. It's so exciting and that's cool. And one was like, I don't know, like, it's up to you. I'll support you either way. And the other one was like, have you really thought this through? Like, are you sure? You know, like, this, you kind of have been saying you didn't want to. And it was like Goldilocks.
Wow,
and I was like, gee, thanks. Like, I guess that means I have to decide. like,
it's up to me? What?
Self-accountability. Yeah, like, I decide who I marry?
What?
Like, are you kidding me? Like, this isn't decided by the patriarchy in the church? Like, what?
That's right.
And like, but also I made decisions along the way. I'm not blaming the patriarchy, though. The system that I was in was very much fulfilling that prophecy. But so I remember he came in to the coffee shop, and I just knew it was about to happen. So like, we skied on back to the chalet, and it got awkward, and I was like, oh gosh, what's happening? And I was like, I actually know exactly what's happening. And I was I remember cursing a lot under my helmet, and I'm not a big cursor. And I said a lot of different things, and then yeah, we like he got down on his knee, and it was actually on both knees because like there was so much powder. Like he went on one knee and he like fell down like 6 feet like into the snow.
Oh my God.
So then he was like floundering, and that should have been a sign. But he said stuff. I have no idea what he said. My first thought was no.
Wow.
But then I said yes.
Wow.
Because I was like, I remember thinking like I can maybe deal with this later, and not by like ending it later, but like I can deal with these emotions later. As soon as I said yes, I was like, okay, like I guess like we're doing it, like very innocent in that regard, but then also feeling kind of sick. Like lack of joy. It was like, oh no. And then the cursing started again under my breath, like no one else heard. And like there was just this like trepidation and this weight on my soul. And then I lived with that on and off for like a year and a half, but it would come and go. But I would often look back to that moment and be like, if I had the bravery to have said no then and dealt with just like being in France with someone that you essentially just like broke up with, that pain would have been less than like everything else that followed. But I did the best that I could, and I can't beat up on little Leah.
That's right. And also,
or younger Leah.
You still spared yourself and them future pain if you had done the same thing and said, yes, I will, actually saying yes at the altar.
100%.
And I think about what you mentioned on the feeling sick to your stomach and the immediately of saying no and the weight on your soul. And there's such a physicality to how you're speaking. And I think our bodies also have a way of communicating to us when our brains and our minds 100%. Go on overdrive to literally convince us of something, even when we know perhaps in our deepest, quote, inner knowing, which is, we can talk about what we mean by that. But I think there is a way that our bodies do not lie to us, even when our minds do. And I also was thinking when you were speaking about how, you said that you are, someone, and I know this about you, is always concerned about others and how they are feeling and how they are doing and not wanting to hurt people. And I think that there is a commonality perhaps across those who, enter into these engagements. There's so much love and care and not wanting to hurt the other person, and such a, I don't know how to say this the correct way, or if there is a correct way, but there's such a high tolerance for your own discomfort. And you were willing to continue to sacrifice that on behalf of the other person. And I have seen that across the board and friends in
because I thought the feeling would
dating
go away.
Relationships. Yes, that's right. Yes, and there is there's such a high tolerance for discomfort, and there's also such a high aptitude and ability to make situations and relationships work. And I know that, with being mindful of all individuals involved, everyone I know that has been in these types of situations, they have navigated extremely challenging, very close relationships in other parts of their life. So there is a skill and an ability, and perhaps even like not a choice of their own, whether it be from family or otherwise, where they've already had to kind of do that, of navigate a really challenging relationship they didn't have a lot of choice in, or had to manage it or navigate it or continually be uncomfortable in. And perhaps there is something connected there as well in terms of already being familiar with that dynamic, and so being willing to do that in a dating to an engagement.
Totally. Or like when you speak not being taken seriously or like brushed off, or just being used to that. And like back to your point about like your body knowing, I completely agree. And like that was when I started doing depression napping. I wasn't aware of the term until Simone Biles came out and started talking about it with her Olympics experience. But like excessive sleeping as a form of disengaging, literally, from the reality and the situation. And it's really a form of self-harm in many ways, because you're disengaging from your life. You're like removing yourself. And I just found a lot of, I guess you could say, comfort in being disengaged from myself by sleeping through it, literally. Like, I would sleep, I could easily sleep like 13, 14 hours a night on my weekends. No problem.
Wow.
And I would wake up and I would just be so exhausted. But it was like, but I just thought that this was how maybe people felt. Because then when you tell people, it's like, once again, people don't really realize the gravitas of what you're talking about, perhaps. Maybe I didn't do a good job of explaining it, but it goes right back to the like, well, I've asked for help, but the help was met with like, you'll be okay. And it's like, okay, then I'll be okay. So how do I be okay? Okay, these are the things I need to do to like continue and to like live. And then like slowly, like you just start getting drained and drained and drained and losing self. And it's such a slow fade. And then like you wake up one day and there's some form of ultimatum or something. And then the camel is in the tent and you're like, what have I done? And there's regret, but it's not like, I think self-loathing is a thing to try to totally avoid at all costs. Like, because you are doing the best that you can with what you have. And like a lot of us just don't have the right therapy tools or psychological tools to actually like navigate these things. Like I've gotten so much better at self-advocating because I have gone through that.
That's extraordinary.
And like willing to take the risks of speaking truth and speaking out publicly about things that are wrong. And it's like, well, if the fallout is going to be big, the fallout is going to still be less than like the burnout within.
Because the burnout within will externalize. It's not an if, but a when also.
Yes.
So there is the damage to self, but it will
and you
spill
don't know
over.
In what way.
That's right.
And you're like losing time. Like you're not living your life fully and healthily, and like you're robbing yourself of joy, but you also are petrified. So it's like such a conundrum. It's not like, well, just love yourself better. It's like, no, like this is a serious thing.
And all the false narratives that you're speaking to, like the also the it will be okay and cold feet. I think one that we've kind of implied, but just to call out directly, is there's the very false narrative of, if you love them, it's enough, or love is enough. And that is not the case. And so I think, and the looking for support and looking for comfort. And I mean, I was asked this, multiple times, even in dating relationships, of like, do you love them? And I think that is such a, of course, an important and beautiful question, but there is so much else that I think must be considered. There's levels of compatibility. There's levels of, do you navigate the world and do you have the same kind of values? There's so many aspects to what makes a relationship work and healthy and function. And I've been thinking a lot about this idea of like growth mindset and of active listening, and thinking about if you, and again, I'm biased as your BFF, but if you're going to your partner expressing concern and distress, and they're just trying to alleviate your fears and not helping you explore what the root is,
yes,
I think that there is a disconnect there, and perhaps an incompatibility there. So all that to say, love is not enough, and that has taken me years to discover myself. But I think that is something that I would wager a bet that my friends that have also called off engagements, they've expressed similar, that they loved their ex-fiancés tremendously. And that was not the reason. Obviously, it wasn't a lack of love. There was other issues, and so it is not enough. So when people use that as a base mark for whether you should stay with someone, I think that we as the friends, as the BFFs, we need to be really thoughtful about not unintentionally or inadvertently going to those false narratives to provide our friends support, because that's not support.
Right. Well said, BFF. You nailed that one. When the time comes, I'm going to do the proposing, and then it's like it's
do just Lorelai Gilmore propose to Luke at Luke's Diner. Yes.
But what have you learned from like where you stand with your BFF bird's eye view of basically how has your perspective of engagement changed over the years?
Oh, It's changed tremendously. And, I thank you and my friends, frankly, so much for that because, again, we grew up in similar environments, very, conservative religious communities where there is, very specific milestones that need to be crossed at specific times. And engagement is very serious, and it is, taken as the prelude to marriage in a very severe way. And so I think that I remember thinking that as I, watched you and supported you and I've had other friends, I think that another mantra I live by is it's never done until it's done. And even when it's done, you can change your mind. And so I think that there is the way I look at engagement and the way I look at, frankly, even relationships now is to never lose my own agency. Because I think that having not been engaged, but having had been in love before and having had serious relationships before, I had to learn that lesson also for myself. And I think that when you have that just really embedded in your mind and heart and spirit, you're able to hopefully make those choices if and when those choices come, to be able to know if I'm saying no in my heart or my mind, I can utter those words or that word versus kind of convince myself otherwise. So it's changed my mentality drastically. I think I also take I take marriage very seriously for a variety of ways in terms of it just cannot be, I could not imagine going into it lightly. But further than that, I think watching you and my friends, it's been that relationships need to be really factored. Because I think another alignment that I saw was that for you and for a few of my friends, there was a very intense level of like commitment to the other person for often in an extended period of time. And so I think that part of the relationships piece as well is just making sure that you maintain your own self-worth, self-esteem, identity, and kind of sense of self outside of the other person. And so I think also when I think about having not been engaged, but having been in serious relationships, I think it's still important to maintain your sense of self in a really in a clear way, and also knowing that you can always change your mind. I think, again, curiosity is key in all areas of life, and really needs to be something that should be more normalized in relationships. I think there's an assumption if you've been with someone long enough, you're just going to be with them. But people change and they evolve. And again, going back to our rule about your brain needs to be fully formed before you put that ring on your finger, man. Like, I think that people change so much. And especially think about the decade of your 20s, even your 30s. You're changing careers. Your, parents are aging. You're getting degrees, maybe. You're, having all of these different life-forming experiences, and the level of change and growth and evolution as a human being in, that specific season of your life where we see, I think statistically, so many of our, not even statistically, just we see in our lives so many people like getting married and getting engaged. People will change so much. So I think there's also a very false assumption that, again, I've seen in my own experience now of like that even if something worked in a relationship with someone when you were 22 may or may not work when you're 27, and so I think that there just is so much that has changed for me in terms of how I look at relationships and engagements, because it is you have to allow the other person to grow and evolve, and you have to be curious to see, are you going to grow and evolve with them or distance? I think there's just a lot of questions that we don't often allow ourselves to consider.
I am so glad the world gets to hear the BFF wisdom that I've been getting. You're so wise.
My ultimate hype woman.
Honestly, you're so wise. I'm like, keep talking. This is such gold. Like, I'm learning so much. I do think, like, yeah, it's like that song, like, if you love her, then you'll let her go. Like, I think there's a lot of truth there. Like, I did dog rescue for a while, And like, you get to a point where like when you're a foster and it's time to give the dog up for adoption, like you're not giving the dog up to the world for adoption because you don't like the dog anymore. Like, you want what's best for the dog, and like it's a hard process. I have gotten to myself too far into yet another analogy, because now people are gonna be like, Leah thinks men are dogs. It's like, well, not all of them. I'm not saying that. No, but yeah, I just think that there is like a freedom that comes.
Yes.
You're gonna be okay. It's a hard thing. It's hard to realize that there's going to be a tomorrow and a next year and growth and happiness again, but like it does come. And like that dark cloud, even for not engagements, like just like for relationships and even losing friendships, you know, like that dark cloud will dissipate, and like there is hope. I hope people have BFFs like you to be there, and like I'm so thankful that you've been there for me, and just thank you.
I hope you and anyone who is listening who has done the hard thing and done the brave thing to break off an engagement is tremendously proud of themselves, because they frankly have done the thing that many did not have the courage to do. And I hope also for anyone who's perhaps listening who is in a marriage, that again, you still have agency and choice. And
yes, the agency doesn't go away with marriage.
That's right. And again, I say that there's so many nuanced layers when we think about all the challenges we're facing in the world with domestic violence and abuse, and there's so many nuanced factors. So I don't mean to overgeneralize, just to share that, I think what's coming up for me now and just having this conversation with BFF is community is everything and people is everything. And so I think about just a tremendous privilege I've had to support friends who have done the brave thing, and how it's inspired me and encouraged and just catalyzed me to be a wiser person in the way that I navigate relationships. I think it actually shows a lot of integrity to be able to navigate relationships with such intentionality, because also you breaking off that engagement allowed for both you and that other person to be able to see what is there for them. And so I think that there's a lot of ways to kind of take a view of this, this picture that we have. And so I think that I've just been amazed to watch you, BFF, and how you have navigated this journey of, breaking off an engagement, and how much you have grown and learned, and how you are in this position to be able to give back to a community that often doesn't have a lot of advocacy. And so I think that life is long, but life is also short. And I think that there's too much that we all have to offer to the world. And I think that we must have, more than ever, we must have people that we can do it with. So whether that's friendships and dating, relationships, or marriage, we all need to be with people that will continue to propel us to our greatest selves.
But yeah, when you can't see it for yourself, when you can't see the other side, like, lean on the BFFs who have some more perspective, because there is another side, and you can make it through. You're gonna live. Well, to end on like a Brene Brown quote, she's like, yeah, it's a scary place out there, but when you go out into the wilderness, you find people that are out there too, and you're not alone. And there's some new adventures out there waiting for you, but you have to actually use your self-agency to get out there, as scary as it seems. But it's not the end. It is literally the beginning. This podcast was produced by the Anthology Group.